Welcome back everyone, it's Haz here and with the first Salmon Report of the year. A quick introduction to the series for first-timers. Salmon Report is a weekly series that goes through all the rotations of the week and tries to introduce coworkers to all the weapons that will be present and prepare you for the shifts this week in Salmon Run. I'm planning another somewhat rework of the series, considering I'm not sure it's still quite as impactful as it was, now that I also released the reports in image format, but I'm working on adding more information into these videos that I hopefully can finish once I get rid of this sickness. With that said, this first report of the year is looking amazing. We have some amazing rotations coming, so without further ado, let's see this week's shifts. First, the current rotation is on spawning grounds with the Splattershot Jr., Undercover Brella, Sloshing Machine, and the classic Squiffer. Next, we'll visit Gone Fission Hydroplant with the Dappled Dualies, Dark Tetra Dualies, Rapid Blaster, and the E-Leader 4K. Then we have Marooner's Bay with another Dualie, the Splat Dualies with the L3 Nuzzle Nose, Squeezer, and the Split Charger. And finally, what a lot of people have been waiting for, the next wildcard rotation is here on spawning grounds with the debut of the Grizzco Charger. All of these rotations are really fun looking, honestly, and as I was making the infographics, I realized these are some excellent rotations overall, so great time to get your badges. Now let's see the details. So first rotation right now in spawning grounds is possibly also the hardest this week, so once we get past, it only gets better. First weapon is the Splattershot Jr., one of the average standard shooters that I don't really have much to explain about. It's simple and easy, that's why we love it. This weapon is known for having one of the best, if not the best, ink efficiency in the game, with an enormous ink tank that just lets you spray for a really long time before running out of ink. So because of that, it's the best weapon to also paint the stage with ink as much as you can. Apart from that, it has somewhat low range, so can't handle all the bosses like steelheads or fiststicks really well, but instead you should spend that much more time clearing lesser salmonids, as they are still one of the highest threats that people just ignore in Salmon Run. Clear especially those chums and small fry and let your coworkers handle the bigger targets. For boss priority, since you have good mobility, it will be your responsibility mostly to respond to static bosses on the shore fast, so that means stingers and big shots, but remember not to spend too much time on the shore, especially since you have low damage. Your partner in crime will be the Undercover Brella. Along with the Splattershot Jr., the Undercover is the other really mobile weapon this shift, so you share your duties in going for static bosses on the shore, and if you do it well, while both weapons have really low DPS overall, together you can complement each other really well to make those shore runs less tedious. Just like all Brellas, remember to use your canopy with the Undercover, as by bumping into enemies you can dish out some bonus damage, not to mention clear lesser salmonids efficiently so that your coworkers don't have to bother with that much. This becomes especially important during Glowfly Rush Wave or Griller Wave, as holding out your canopy can deal with small fry or the Glowfly chums really well. Next to using your canopy offensively, it's also a great tool for defense, as you probably know it, but I can't stress enough to start practicing holding your Brella out when being targeted by steelhead bombs or flyfish rockets, as you can also protect yourself from those blasts. Now we have the Sloshing Machine, one of my favorite weapons to play in Salmon Run, along with the Dynamo Roller, as these weapons just have so many tricks that make them even more fun. For maximum utilization of the Sloshing Machine, I recommend my guide on the channel for it, as it shows some vital tricks and playstyle tips that's really needed to use this weapon. But what's most important is that the Sloshing Machine has an AoE swirl around its shots that also deal damage. And thanks to the buffs this weapon got in Salmon Run Next Wave, you can now split whole hordes of chumps coming your way by aiming above them so that the swirling hits all of them instead of just splitting them one by one. Another cool trick is to fire highly angled shots into the air to delay your shots just enough to squeeze in more damage to one-cycle bosses that otherwise would escape you, such as Drizzlers. There are several other cool tricks for the weapon, which is why I recommend the guide, but once you master them all, the Sloshing Machine can handle pretty much all situations. For this rotation specifically, I think the other weapons mostly struggle with fiststicks, so I would prioritize them with the Sloshing Machine, especially if they are near the basket, and after that you can help out where needed, but I wouldn't go too far away with the machine. If I had to describe this rotation with one word, I would say it's mobility. And the fourth weapon does not disappoint on that front, as we got the classic Squiffer. It's my favorite charger that combines great mobility with firepower, as the Squiffer can continue to charge its shots fast while jumping, which is a surprising amount of boost to your movement, especially on spawning grounds where there's just so much jumping you can do for extra survival. It also charges its shots somewhat faster while trading some of its range away, but I find it somewhat the perfect balance for chargers while still having its important features such as piercing with fully charged shots that will help you against lessers. As expected, these advantages allow the Squiffer to play more aggressively and even do shore runs if needed, but most importantly, allows it to be somewhat more self-sufficient compared to the rest of the chargers. For this rotation, you have the best range among the weapons, so naturally, focus on Steelhead so your coworkers don't have to, and the Squiffer is also a great weapon to take care of those Drizzler torpedoes flying everywhere, and well, the Drizzlers themselves too. Next rotation is on Fission Hydroplant with the Dualies squad. First, the Dapple Dualies. They are one of the best basic weapons you can get in Salmon Run. They have one of the best consistent DPS you can get while also being one of the most mobile weapons, which is a great combination in Salmon Run. Its only weakness I would say is its low range, so you will often find yourself too close to Salmonids, but as long as you roll enough and use your turret mode for increased fire rate, there really shouldn't be anything that you can't handle. After all, this is pretty much one of the carry weapons. There isn't very much to say about the Dapples apart from praising it, since it's also very easy to play, so to get to the point, because of your high DPS you should focus on high health bosses immediately, so take down big shots and Drizzlers the moment you see them, and if you're wondering, then yes, the Dapples are absolutely a Kohozuna killer weapon. My final tip for this specific rotation would be once again take extra care for splitting lesser Salmonids. Players usually forget about them, but with these high DPS weapons you can really take the stress off your team so they can focus more on bosses and collecting eggs. The second weapon is another dualie, the Dark Tetra Dualies, that's sadly on the opposite side of the spectrum compared to the Dapples, and I think it's probably the worst of the dualies. This weapon's specialty is around its rolls. More specifically, it can roll 4 times in a row for less overall ink cost, and also has the ability to shoot at the same time, which is a fairly good feature for PvP, but not so much for Salmon Run sadly. For this, it sacrifices damage and range at the same time without gaining anything worthwhile, so we have a fairly mediocre weapon on our hands. Now that doesn't mean it's useless. You still have your turret mode for increased fire rate, but it's nowhere near the power of the Dapples, so while you can help along with clearing lessers, I wouldn't recommend rushing to the shore or trying to take care of big shots alone too much, as you might struggle with your damage output. With that said, I think the Tetra Dualies will be a great choice for a support weapon, so you can try to keep the basket area somewhat cleaner and also watch out for your E-leader player to make sure there's nothing nasty around them. Next, the Rapid Blaster. I'm fairly biased when it comes to this weapon, but basically, I find the Rapid Blaster to be just short of being a great weapon. It's supposed to be a blaster with better fire rate in exchange for damage and smaller blast radius, but it just doesn't hit the thresholds to be useful in certain Salmon Run situations, like splitting steelheads fast or having better blast radius for fish sticks. Nonetheless, it's still very useful, and if we focus on its faster firing, it's a great filtering weapon you can use against lesser Salmonids a lot and help out your teammates. Especially on Fission Hydroplant, just fire at lesser hordes from above and weaken them so that your dualies barely have to touch them for the splats, and you can help keeping the whole stage clear. Just like all blasters, you can still help out a lot against stingers on the shore and fish sticks, so respond to these bosses spawning accordingly. Finally, remember to practice jump shooting with blasters to enhance your mobility in case you find yourself surrounded or somewhat in a pickle. It's a very easy technique to get used to and will help a lot in the long run. Last of this rotation, the E-Leader 4K. This is the longest range weapon in the game and at the same time possibly the slowest one too, so it comes at a pretty steep cost. Next to its range, the E-Leader has exceptional damage, though it takes quite some time to charge itself up fully. I believe it's somewhere around 2 seconds. Because of how sluggish it is, your normal horde clearing of chargers can be applied so easily, so lessers are even more bothersome for the E-Leader, which is why I've been recommending clearing them with the other weapons so that the E-Leader can try to focus more on bosses. Overall, I think the worst part about the E-Leader is that the enormous range is just not needed at all, and you give up too much for it, when in the end you're really just reduced to dealing with the same bosses as a normal charger, just a lot slower and with significantly more trouble. So yeah, you continue to be on steelhead duty, popping those bombs, your high damage is also great against drizzlers, and of course big shots on the shore. Try to stay on the walls and near the other coworkers so you never get overwhelmed by lessers, and definitely avoid going to the shore. You really have no business being near there at all with a very sluggish and slow weapon like the E-Leader. Then we are back on Marooner's Bay, the current bane of freelance Salmon Run, but fortunately the weapons are quite excellent for this shift, perfect for practice. First, we got another dually, the Dualies. This is definitely one of the standard shooters, just with the addition that you should care to roll for that extra fire rate that you get from Dualies turret mode. It's very well-rounded and can handle all situations well. If I really had to find some weakness for it, I would say it's somewhat short range, but nothing too much that holds it back. This rotation, honestly, every weapon is incredibly good, so it's hard to say what to focus on, as the three shooters can all do everything. But with the Dualies mobility, I would say the Dualies should focus on shore running if needed, and take care of those big shots and stingers that are far away, so you can just get in and out fast without overstaying your welcome. For its damage, it's not quite as strong as the Dapple Dualies, but I would still use the Dualies against Kohozuna, as it deals very good chunks against him. Next, the L3 Nuzzle Nose, another standard shooter, though this one is a burst fire gun. Unlike its brother, the H3 Nuzzle Nose, the L3 has a really good fire rate, so the burst firing is less a problem, and the end lag while visible isn't that bothersome. The only thing you have to get used to is its awful tap firing, so if your fingers are not up to the job, this weapon can be really annoying to play. With that said, it has excellent ink efficiency, good damage, and decent range, so I really can't say much bad about it despite not liking it that much myself. For your duties, I think the Dualies and the L3 share them for the most part, and work best together, especially when going to the shore, as there's nothing they can't handle together, so if you get the L3 similarly, try to respond to those urgent shore bosses as soon as you can, and get in and out fast so you can help out the rest of the team instead of wasting too much time on the shore. For its DPS, it's overall pretty good, but we already have a weapon focusing on Kohozuna for that extra wave. I'd say keep to splitting bosses and using your egg launcher instead if you get the L3. Our third weapon is our third shooter this shift, and once again, this is really good RNG to have three powerful shooters in a single rotation. So the third shooter is the Squeezer, and we already talked about this weapon a lot. It's a unique shooter that has two firing modes, very similar to the ballpoint splitling, but works the exact opposite way and is fortunately a lot more simple to learn. By tap firing, the Squeezer gains very long firing range and increased damage per shot. This is your main damage dealing mode, or when you need that extra range to take care of stingers on the shore or perhaps some high health bosses like a Big Shot or Drizzlers, but the range is also excellent against steelheads. Alternatively, you have your hold fire mode, which is a short-range fast firing mode, and despite what one would think, this is your ink efficient firing mode that's also used for painting. This mode is actually so good with ink efficiency that for longer firing sessions, it gains an edge over tap firing, and so for example against Kohozuna, this is considered the higher consistent DPS mode. Thanks to these two modes, the Squeezer can pretty much handle all situations, but since the other shooters somewhat lack range, I'd recommend to help out against fish sticks, especially on this map, while also helping out the Grizzco Charger with steelheads if needed. Lastly, with your tap shots, you can also destroy Drizzler torpedoes without a problem, and getting rid of those ink storm goes a long way in winning your shifts, so don't ignore them. Then our last weapon, the Grizzco Charger. It is your standard charger, so not much to say about it overall. It has average charge time, range, and mobility, but it's just perfect to practice this weapon type and do what it's good at without any major drawbacks. Biggest thing for freelance that I see is still players ignoring the full charge piercing, so remember to use your chargers against hordes of lesser salmonids in a line. You would be surprised how good these weapons are against them. Apart from that, you have your standard charger duty to split steelheads, drizzlers, and help out with cohawks for your team, so it's nothing too complicated. Finally, we have arrived to the fourth rotation this week, which is the wildcard rotation on the weekend of January the 14th. We have seen all the different Grizzco weapons by now, and this time around it's finally time for the Grizzco Charger to debut with its full beauty. As always, you will have 20% chance to get this weapon each wave, so chances are not bad, and hopefully the Grizzco Charger will make more players fall in love with chargers overall. What you need to know about this weapon is that it plays very similarly to the Bamboozler with its rapid charge firing, while also having the same range as an E-Leader 4K, so the longest range possible in the game. The next unique thing about the Grizzco Charger is that it's always fully charged. So even your tap firing is a full charge shot that always deals 200 damage no matter what. And unlike the Bamboozler, you still have your unique charger piercing and your shots go through enemies. All of this combined, the Grizzco Charger can fire 7 times in a row very rapidly, dealing insane amount of damage to all enemies in a line in front of it, making it one of the highest DPS weapons in the game, so I certainly can't wait to try it out against Kohozuna. Unfortunately, we've been mostly spoiled recently with the Grizzco Slosher and the Splatana, as the Grizzco Charger sadly does not pierce through Salmonid armor, so it won't damage through Steelheads or Drizzler armor, and it'll be forced to target weak points, but it's still a pretty overpowered weapon worth looking forward to. Mark your calendars, this rotation is on the 14th of January, and you really don't want to miss it. You never know when we get these Grizzco weapons again in the future. But that is pretty much it for the first Salmon report of 2023, and I'm personally looking forward to all of these rotations this week, as they are all really good with some surprisingly good weapon RNG, especially the triple shooter one on Marooner's Bay. You all know the drill. If I missed anything, which is highly possible as I still feel a bit sick, leave your feedback in the comment section, or if you have any questions regarding any of the weapons or stages, also let us know. Thank you so much for your support for my videos and Salmon reports. I hope they are still useful and help you with your shifts. I'm working on making them even more informative and potentially easier on the eyes, so hopefully in a few weeks I can show what I'm working on. Until then, take care everyone, good luck on your shifts, and I'll see you in the next time.